Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we are looking at the new Marvel Legends 12-inch scale or 1/6 scale Hulk figure. Now this guy is a market improvement over the previous 12-inch figures from Hasbro, so this is pretty cool, pretty interesting to see. He does come at a much higher price point. He's around $75 depending on where you get him. But it's a whole lot of figure, and they actually did a really good job with most of the things on there. So I'm pretty excited to be showing this to you guys. It should be good, and I think a lot of you are going to be pretty interested in it. So let's go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. The first thing to note about this guy is his height. He stands at just about 15 inches tall. Now that's pretty close to the proper scale, but it is just a tiny bit under, assuming Hulk is going to be between 7 and 8 feet tall. Probably closer to 8. He's a little bit undersized for your 1/6 scale, but just by a little bit, and I think it's okay. He's definitely going to stand taller than the other guys. Unfortunately, I don't have any to compare, but you can tell at 15 inches he's going to have a little bit of a height advantage. Now, compared to a standard Marvel Legends, he's got a significant height advantage, and I figure some of you may be interested in seeing that, so I'll stand Thor next to him, and yeah, he comes up to not even quite his hips. So huge size difference. It's definitely going to be a big Hulk figure for you guys if you're interested in that sort of thing. And another thing to note right off the bat is it's got a lot of paint on it. The shading's not the cleanest shading I've ever seen, and they used this kind of almost reddish brown, so it's a little bit strange, but it doesn't look bad. And even though it is pretty sloppy in most places, it does look pretty good. I mean, it gives the figure a nice overall appeal. It's particularly nice in the abs, but then you'll see, like, there's, for the shading on the chest, it's actually not in the crevice, it's only on the two sides. So some things like that, it's not great. You can see it's pretty obvious, just lines that don't line up with anything on the shoulder. But I think overall, and for a Hasbro product, it's pretty good. It'll definitely get the job done, and it looks pretty nice. No shading on the pants, however, just the torn parts have the white on them, which I think is good enough. I mean, it could be better, obviously, but I think it'll do. The last two things to note about the paint job, they did not paint his fingernails or his toenails, so that does give it somewhat of an unfinished look, but again, it's not terribly noticeable. But they did do a pretty good job with the face because the eyes are actually a separate piece, so you don't have to worry about the clean paint job in there at all. It's very clean and it looks fantastic. Same thing's true for the hair. It's a separate piece, and it does have green shading on there, so that's very, very nice. Now, in terms of accessories, we do have two different heads. We have the more modern-looking head with the kind of normal-looking hair, and then we have the older hair with the bowl cut and the angry face. So I personally prefer the modern one by a whole bunch, but you do have that option, and they did do a really good job on the angry face. Very, very nicely done. And we do have two different sets of hands. We have two fist hands and then two open hands, and they both have a swivel and a hinge in them, so you should be able to get your posing done just fine. Now, the articulation on some of the previous 12-inch figures was a little bit suspect. Having the diaphragm joint above the ab crunch has been proven to be a relatively ineffective and unrealistic way to articulate figures. Luckily, Hulk here remedies that situation. We'll get to that in just a second. First, let's talk about the head. It does get decent range. It can look up and down fairly well, particularly well going down. So I think that's okay considering he's taller than everyone else. And of course you have some rotation, but the way the neck and the traps are, it's going to be a little bit difficult to get too much range going side to side. You're going to have to kind of turn the head at an angle, which isn't terrible, but it's something to note. Since it's on a ball peg, you can lean it from side to side for a little bit of attitude, so that's good. Unfortunately, all it is a ball peg, so it does have some limitation. It's not too bad though. And then for the shoulders, it's your standard ball hinge. You get pretty good range going out to the side. It might take a little bit of force, but it does go better than horizontal, so that's really nice. And then of course you do have your full rotation, but notice how they sculpted the pecs. It makes the pecs look really nice, but they don't have any cut out there at all for the arm. So if you're going to rotate the arm, you're going to have to do it just to the side a little bit, which I think is okay. But do be aware that it's already a fairly stiff joint, and it's going to squeak a whole bunch. But you do get good range, and you should be fine. If you can tolerate that noise, you should be okay. You do have your full bicep swivel, so that's fine. Double jointed elbow. Now here's the interesting thing about the elbow. They have kind of an elongated hinge down here and a pretty short one up here. It doesn't seem to really affect the functionality, so I'm not too worried about it. But let's see how we get range-wise. If we use just the top joint, we get about 90 degrees. So that's pretty good. And if we use the bottom joint in conjunction, you get full 180, but we do have that super dislocated looking elbow, so it's really going to come down to what you want to do. You have the options, and for a bulky figure like this, I think it's probably okay. So just be aware that it does look a little weird when it's fully functional, but it is fully functional. We did already mention the wrists, full swivel, and then of course you have the hinge. That works just fine. Now on to this potentially problematic torso. Spider-Man didn't work out so well because this joint didn't work that well, and having him lean forward and then rotate just doesn't allow you to put him in very many poses, and it's not a great way to recreate the anatomy of a human. The way humans can bend, it just doesn't work. Now luckily on Hulk here, this ab crunch is almost inconsequential. The diaphragm joint is incredibly well done. He can lean incredibly far back. He does have a little bit of a lump here because of how it's sculpted, but I can definitely give him that. I think that's okay. Very good range going back. Very good range going forward. Without the ab crunch, he's already hunched over almost completely. So that's really, really nice. You do get incredibly good range going out to the sides as well. This is probably the best diaphragm joint Hasbro has ever produced. It's just fantastic. It works so well. And then, of course, it can rotate around. It does kind of fight you a little bit, but you can do it. As you can see, almost completely to the side. And I can keep going if I want to, so that's fine. Really, really good. Now, the ab crunch, it doesn't really go back at all, and it only goes forward a little bit. So it's really inconsequential. They probably could have avoided it altogether, but it doesn't hurt the figure at all because this diaphragm joint is so nice. Very, very well executed. For the hips, surprising enough, his legs go really far out to the side. Far better than most Spider-Man figures we get these days. And this is the bulkiest figure they've ever made. So explain that one to me. Hips work no problem at all. Almost completely forward. Of course, his bulky thighs do get in the way a little bit, so I can give him that. We do have our thigh swivel, which works just fine. No problem at all there. And then the double jointed knee, which works much like the elbow. You get pretty good range, but it does get very blocky looking, but you get about 90 degrees, and I think for a figure this big that is just fine. And then we do have a shin swivel on here, so if you like that, that's good. However, it's just a swivel, and it's right in the middle of his shin, so it's particularly ugly, but it is functional. I just really hate that they did that. Would have been so much nicer to just put a ball hinge in there, but that is a particularly ugly joint. The ankles, on the other hand, are pretty much your standard Marvel Legends ankles, except they have really good range going forward and really good range going back. And we get our ankle rocker, which isn't too bad. It doesn't go off to an angle too far, so I think that's okay. And then they did pretty much a perfect toe joint. It's a little bit far back here, but it does work exactly how I like a toe joint to work. It's nice and flush at the bottom. There's no cutouts anywhere, so I really do like that. Very pleased with it, but as you can see, the toes are all the way up here, and the joint's all the way back here. So it's not quite in the right location, but functionally speaking, they did a really good job. So this figure definitely gets my vote of approval. I think they did a pretty much as good a job as they could do for being Hasbro and not creating an incredibly high-end figure. It's very satisfying. Now, this is not mine. I didn't pay for it. It's my brother's. He let me use it for the review. But if I had purchased it, I would be satisfied. So I think you guys will be too if you grab one. Go ahead and check them out. They haven't shown up at Big Bad Toy Store yet, but I'll be posting if they do, so follow me on Facebook for that. He got his at Toys R Us, and I think they've also shown up on Amazon, so keep an eye out at those places. But yeah, very, very solid figure. I like it a whole bunch, and I think you guys will too. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you come back for that. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And in the meantime, keep collecting.